continuing the trial of the Pope by Tanner and Dennet. We're in part 3, and where we left off is there was witnesses going on stand, and they were being asked questions and answers. This one begins with Childeric, King of France, sworn in. Question: did not the prisoner at the bar, under pretext that he was Christ's vicar, depose you and place another person on your throne? Answer: he did, in the year 751, when he called himself Pope Zachary I, Vicar of Christ. Question: will you relate to the court some of the leading particulars of that transaction? Answer: in the year in the year I before noticed, one Pepin, who was mayor, aspired to the throne, and in an assembly by him collected, proposed the design of dethroning his sovereign. It was then agreed that Roman pontiff should be first consulted, and accordingly an ambassador was sent by Pepin to Rome with the following question: whether the divine law did not permit a valiant and warlike people to dethrone a pusillanimous and indolent monarch who was incapable of discharging any of the functions of royalty, and to substitute in his place one more worthy to rule, and who had already rendered most important services to the state. The prisoner then decreed Pepin to be king of France, and as soon as the decision of the Pope was published in France, I was stripped of royalty. Pepin ascended the throne and was anointed by his legate at Soissons. Soon after this, the prisoner assumed the title of Pope Stephen II. When he came into France to solicit assistance to fight against the Lombards, he then dissolved the obligation of the oath of allegiance that Pepin had sworn to me, and which he had violated by his usurpation. And to render his crown pretendedly sacred, he anointed him a second time with his wife and 2 sons. Pepin, in return, fought for the prisoner with a numerous army against the Lombards, and in the year following established him as a temporal prince. Question: do you recollect in what year the prisoner came into France and anointed Pepin? Answer: in the year 754. Question: then he never was properly established as a temporal prince till the year of our Lord 755, and he obtained both his spiritual and temporal authority, it appears, by usurpers like himself? Answer: he never was owned as a temporal prince till the year 755, and after that he carried 2 swords to signify both his terrestrial and celestial power, which he had blended together. Henry IV, Emperor, sworn. Question: have you any knowledge of the prisoner at the bar? Answer: I have. I have reason to know him, and so have many thousands. When I knew him, he was called Pope Gregory VII. Question: what authority did he aggregate over you as Christ's vice-regent on earth? Answer: he claimed the power of appointing all persons to ecclesiastical dignities, while my subjects were to support them within my empire at a very heavy expense. From a prevailing custom, emperors and kings had long considered themselves empowered to act independently in this case, and appoint whom they thought proper. I refused to give up my right as emperor, and he persisted in the most insolent manner to demand my submission. Had the German princes seconded my claim, it is more than probable he would have compelled to desist from his demands. But as nearly all Germany were then his devoted slaves and civil discord divided the empire, the imperious pontiff ordered me to repair to Rome immediately and clear myself of various crimes laid to my charge. I absolutely refused to obey his summons, but assembled a council of German bishops at Worms. Before this council, the prisoner was charged, justly, with several flagitious practices, deposed from his pontificate, of which he was declared unworthy. He no sooner received information of what was done at Worms, but with all the violence possible, he thundered out his anathemas on my head to exclude me from the throne and absolve all my subjects from their oath of allegiance to me as their lawful sovereign. This he did in the name of the Vicar of Christ and Prince over all nations. And no terms are sufficient to express the complicated scenes of misery that arose through the war, which then took place between the civil and ecclesiastical powers. The Suebian chiefs, with Duke Rudolph at their head, then revolted from me, and the Saxon princes followed their example. These united powers were requested by the prisoner to elect a new emperor, and accordingly they met at Triber in the year 1076 to take counsel together. The result of this meeting was, the case being referred to the prisoner, he was to be invited to a congress at Augsburg. The various rigorous conditions imposed on me, they added, that I must forfeit the kingdom if, within the space of a year, I was not restored to the bosom of the church and delivered from the anathema that lay on my head. When things came to this extremity and grew worse and worse every day, I was advised to go into Italy and implore in person the clemency of the Roman pontiff. I yielded to the ignominious counsel, passed the Alps amidst the rigor of a severe winter, and arrived in the month of February 1077. Immediately I repaired to the fortress of Canasuum, where the prisoner, as the pretended sanctimonious vicar of Christ at that time resided, was a young woman named Matilda, Countess of Tuscany, and the most powerful patroness of his church. At the entrance of this fortress, I stood 3 days in the open air, without the least regard paid by the prisoner to my situation. My feet were bare, my head uncovered, and my only raiment was a wretched piece of coarse woolen cloth, which was thrown over my body to cover my nakedness. On the fourth day, I was admitted into the presence of the lordly pontiff, who, with much difficulty, granted me absolution, but he refused to restore me to the throne till the Congress met. After this, my eyes being enlightened to discover much of his wickedness, I opposed him with force of arms to the utmost of my power. I therefore was by him excommunicated a second time, and Rudolph was declared lawful emperor. My arms, however, were yet victorious. I slew Rudolph in battle and took the Pope prisoner. But, being betrayed by my own son, I was compelled to resign my crown. Wow. Basileus II, King of Poland, sworn. Question: do you recollect the prisoner at the bar? Answer: I do, very well. Question: what name do you know him by? Answer: by the name of Pope Gregory VII. Question: did he ever presume to usurp authority over you in Poland? Answer: he did. I was legally elected to the throne by the nobles of Poland and as regularly crowned. But soon time after, through the death of one of his bishops, the prisoner not only excommunicated me, with all the circumstances of infamy that he could invent, but also hurled me from the throne, dissolved the oath of allegiance which my subjects had taken, and by an express imperious edict prohibited the nobles and clergy of Poland from electing a new king without his consent. Leopold, Duke of Austria, sworn. Question: did not the prisoner at the bar excommunicate and anathematize, I can't say that word, anathematize you, claiming that authority as Christ's vice regent on earth? Answer: he did. He assumed the same power over me as over all princes, aggregating to himself this authority as the vicar of Christ. Question: what name did he go by when you knew him? Answer: by the name of Pope Celestin III. He went by that name almost to the close of the 12th century. Henry VI, Emperor, sworn. Question: was you not excommunicated and condemned by the prisoner at the same time with Leopold, Duke of Austria? Answer: I was. The prisoner at the bar had sent Richard I, King of England, to fight for him in the Holy Land. But on his returning home, Leopold and I seized and made him prisoner. The consequence was we were both excommunicated together. Question: did he do it in the name of the Vicar of Christ? Answer: he did. Alfonso X, King of Galicia and Leon, sworn. Question: did not the prisoner at the bar excommunicate and I can't say that word, Father. Anathemized you by the name of Pope Celestin III? Answer: he did. It was on account of a marriage into which I had entered. John, King of England, sworn. Question: of what religion are you? Answer: I have long professed the Roman Catholic religion, though I have differed much from the prisoner on account of his base conduct toward me. Question: will you relate to the court what you know of this prisoner's assumed authority over you as the vicar of Christ? Answer: when I knew the prisoner, he went by the name of Pope Innocent III. At that time, he ordered the monks of Canterbury to choose one Stephen Langton, a cardinal, to be archbishop after a regular election had been made by the convent and confirmed by me. I objected to his being received and wrote to the prisoner informing him of the consequences in case he persisted in his demand. He then sent orders to some of his bishops to lay the kingdom under an interdict unless I received Langton. Such was my ignorance of real religion and the deluded state of Europe that I was unwilling to break off entirely my connection with him. I therefore agreed to confirm the election made at Rome, but not making much concessions as the prisoner demanded, and the interdict was proclaimed. All the places of worship shut up for 3 years, and the dead buried in the highways without the ordinary rites of interment. This not producing the desired effect, he denounced a sentence of excommunication against me in the year 1208. This was followed about 3 years after by another bull absolving all my subjects from their oath of allegiance and ordering all persons to avoid me on pain of the same displeasure. But in the year 1212, he assembled a council of his cardinals and prelates, deposed me, and declared the throne of England vacant. He then wrote to the King of France to undertake the conquest of Britain and unite it to his forever. At the same time, he sent out another bull, exhorting all Christian princes to second the expedition, promising all who did the same indulgence he had granted for fighting against the infidels. The French monarch obeyed the prisoner and collected a large army for the invasion, while I did all I could to repel it. But when at Dover I met his artful legate, he so terrified me by the report he gave me of the strength of the French army and the disaffection of my own, that I agreed to shameful submission and resigned my crown to the legate. I then took an oath of obedience and delivered up my kingdom to the papal jurisdiction. I was also obliged to promise for myself and heirs to pay an annual sum of 700 marks for England and 300 for Ireland, and that in case any of my successors should refuse to own the Pope's supremacy over England, or should object to pay the submission then required, they should forfeit their right to the British crown. In doing homage to the Pope before his representative, the legate, I presented a large sum of money, which he trampled with all of the arrogance possible under his feet as a mark of my dependence. But not satisfied with this, he retained my crown and scepter 5 days, and then gave them to me as a special gift from the prisoner, then called His Holiness the Pope of Rome. Cross-examined by Mr. Jesuit. Question: did you not publicly declare when you signed the condition on which you received the crown that you had neither been compelled to this measure by fear or force, but that it was your own voluntary act done by the advice of the barons of the kingdom? Answer: I acknowledge I did sign such a declaration, but my long resistance proved it was never my voluntary act. The barons also despised me for what I did, but such was the confused state of things in England that I was glad to sign anything. Philip, Duke of Sabia. It almost looks like Arabia, but it's Sobia? I don't know. Sworn. Question: was there not a dispute between you and Otho IV respecting the right to the Empire of Germany? And did not the prisoner at the bar interfere on this occasion, arrogating to himself authority as vicar of Christ and sovereign of the world? Answer: there was such a dispute, and the prisoner did presume to settle the same as vicar of Christ on earth. He therefore thundered out his excommunications against me and espoused the cause of Otho. Question: what name did he go by then? Answer: Pope Innocent the Third. Otho the Fourth, Emperor sworn. Question: did the prisoner at the bar justify your claim, establish you as Emperor of Germany in opposition to Philip? Answer: yes. He sanctioned my claim and supported it till the death of Philip, which happened in the year 1209, after which he excommunicated and deposed me and placed on the imperial throne Frederick II, my pupil, in the year 1212. The prisoner then went by the name of Pope Innocent the Third. Philip Augustus, King of France, sworn. Question: do you know the prisoner at the bar, and by what name was he called when you knew him? Answer: I know him well. He went by the name Pope Innocent the Third. Question: was you not anathematized and excommunicated by him? Answer: I was, for divorce from Ingeborg, a princess of Denmark. Frederick II, Emperor, sworn. Question: did you not take a very active part in the wars in Palestine known by the name of the Crusades? Answer: yes. I had the command of an army given to me by the prisoner at the bar when he went by the name of Pope Gregory IX. I set out on the expedition in the year 1228 and was crowned king of Jerusalem. Question: did not the prisoner excommunicate you under the pretext of disobedience to his authority as vicar of Christ? Answer: he did, by different names. First, when he assumed the title of Pope Gregory IX, because I delayed to go on his expedition, which bull was drawn up in the most indecent and outrageous language. But I was so devoted to the service of the prisoner that I set out and arrived with a large army in the Holy Land in the year 1228. But how great was my surprise when I heard that after my departure, this pretended vicar of Christ had made war against me in Apula and was using his utmost efforts to arm all the European powers to join him. As soon as I heard of these perfidious and violent proceedings, I returned to Europe in the year 1229, defeated the papal army, and retook the places I had lost in Sicily and Italy. After this, I was induced to make peace with the prisoner, and he gave me public absolution. This peace, however, was but of a short duration, for it was not possible that I could long bear the insolent proceedings and the imperious temper of this headstrong pontiff. I broke, therefore, all alliance with him, and was no longer considered friendly to his ambitious authority. This, with other steps that were equally provoking to his avarice and ambition, drew the thunders of the Vatican anew upon my head in the year 1239. He therefore excommunicated me publicly, with all the circumstances of severity that vindictive rage could invest, and I was charged with the most flagitious crimes and impious blasphemies by the outrageous pontiff. He then sent a copy of this terrible accusation to all the courts of Europe, while my victorious arms maintained my ground and reduced him to the greatest straits. To get rid of these difficulties under which the prisoner labored through his ambition, he convened in the year 1240 a general council at Rome with a view to depose me by the unanimous suffrages of his cardinals and prelates that were to compose that assembly. But I disconcerted that audacious project by defeating in the year 1241 a Genoese fleet, on board of which the greatest part of these prelates were embarked. I committed to confinement these reverend fathers and seized all their treasures, which disappointment attended with others, so dejected the prisoner that he changed his name to that of Celestine the Fourth. He had scarcely assumed this new title before he claimed another, that of Pope Innocent the Fourth. But although he had altered his appellation, his arrogance and fury remained the same. However, by this new name, he proposed terms of peace, but they were too imperious and extravagant not to be rejected with indignation. The prisoner, not thinking his person safe in any part of Italy, set out for uh, Genoa, 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 and afterwards for Lyons in the year 1244. Here he assembled a council that following year, when he deposed me and declared the imperial throne vacant. This unjust and insolent measure was regarded with such veneration and looked upon as so weighty by the German princes, who were blinded and seduced by the superstition of the times, that they proceeded instantly to a new election. Henry, Landgrave of Thuringia, was therefore first elected, and after his death, William, Count of Holland, to the head of the empire. Far from being dejected by these cruel vicissitudes, I continued to carry on the war in Italy and oppose the prisoner to the utmost of my power, until a violent dysentery disabled me from taking the command of my army on the 13th of December, 1250, in Apula. Cross examination by Counselor Quibble. Question. You say that Innocent the Fourth proposed conditions of peace that were too imperious for you to submit. Do you know what they were? Answer. Yes, I certainly do, very well. Question. What were they? Answer. The preliminary conditions were first, that I should give up entirely to the church the inheritance which was left to it by Matilda, and secondly, I should oblige myself to submit to whatever terms the Pope or prisoner at the bar should think fit to propose as conditions of peace. Philip the King of France, sworn in. Question. What name did the prisoner at the bar assume when you knew him? Answer. Several. I knew him when he was called Pope Boniface the Eighth, Pope Benedict the 11th, and Pope Clement the 5th. Question. Will you relate to the court what you knew of him in France during your reign? Answer. About the beginning of the 14th century, when the prisoner was known by the title of Pope Boniface the Eighth, he sent me one of the haughtiest letters imaginable, in which he asserted that I, with all other kings and princes, whatever, were obliged by a divine command to submit to the authority of the Pope in all political and civil matters as well as religious. I answered him in terms expressive of contempt. He rejoined with more arrogance than ever, and in the famous bull, Unam Sanctium, which he published at this time, he asserted that Christ Jesus had granted a twofold power to the church, or the spiritual and temporal sword to him, and also that he had subjected the whole human race to his authority as Roman pontiff, and that whoever dared to disbelieve it were to be deemed heretics and stood excluded from all possibility of salvation. And then down here in an asterisk says this bull is yet extant in the Corpus Juris Canon. Oh, really? It still exists? Well, that was back in the 1800s, I guess. Forgive me, that is kind of ignorant. Okay. Oh, where am I at? And he maintained in express terms that the universal church was under his dominion, and that princes and lay patrons, councils and chapters had no more power in spiritual things than what they derived from him as vicar of Christ. I then assembled together the peers of France, and in the year 1303, and although several princes had failed in the attempt to check his ambition, I resolved to try. I ordered William D. Newgariot, a celebrated lawyer, to draw up accusations against him, publicly charging him with heresies, simony, and many vices, demanding a council to depose such an execrable pope. Immediately after this, he excommunicated me and all my adherents. Far from being terrified by any papal thunder, I again assembled the states of the kingdom to sit in judgment upon him. After which I sent William D. Nogaret, the lawyer, to seize him and bring him a prisoner to Lyons. Boniface, who then lived in perfect security at Anagni, was taken, agreeable to order, by this resolute man. But being rescued by the inhabitants, he soon changed his name through the illness occasioned by the rage into which the lawyer had thrown him. Emperor Sigismund sworn. Q. A Q. Q. Question. Question. Do you not profess the Roman Catholic religion? Answer. I have long professed to be a Roman Catholic, and I confess I have been so deluded that I have even worshipped the prisoner at the bar. Question. Do you recollect attending a rebellious convention called the Council of Constance, convened by the prisoner? Answer. I do. It was at Contents was open in the year 1414 and sat about 3 years and a half. Question. Do you know the reason assigned for calling this council? Answer. I do. It was principally to heal the divisions which had long rent the church, but there were others. Question. Will you relate to the court some of the principal disorders that were then thought to require a remedy? Answer. I will. When I came to the imperial throne, I found the church called after the name of the prisoner, divided into two great factions, and was governed by two who professed to be the pontiff and vicar of Christ. The prisoner, then at Rome, went by the name of Pope Boniface IX, and the other, who resided at Avignon, by that of Pope Benedict VIII. Soon after this, the prisoner assumed a new title, that of Pope Innocent VII, and in about 2 years after another, and was called Pope Gregory the 12th. Benedict, being besieged in Avignon by the King of France, escaped first to Catalona, and afterwards to Perpignan, but did not relinquish his pretensions to the popedom. A plan of reconciliation was, however, formed, and the two contending pontiffs bound themselves, each by an oath, to make a voluntary renunciation of the papal chair, if necessary for the peace and welfare of the church. This agreement they both violated in the most scandalous manner. 8 or 9 cardinals deserted Benedict on account of his place of residence and united themselves to the others, who espoused the claim of the prisoner. When they agreed to assemble a council of Pisa on the 25th of March, 1409, this assembly accordingly met and on the 5th of June pronounced a heavy sentence of condemnation on both their names for being guilty of heresy, perjury, and various crimes. They also declared them unworthy of the smallest honor or respect. But, however strange it may appear to the court, they proceeded to elect the prisoner by a new title, known in the papal list by the name of Pope Alexander V, which, so far from promoting peace in the empire, divided the people into 3 divisions and hurled all Europe into confusion. The King of France and several other princes labored with me to restore tranquility. I requested the prisoner to call a council, who, having in about a year assumed the appellation of Pope John the 23rd, he consented and accordingly issued out his summons to meet at Constance in the month of November 1414. Before the meeting of this council, there were great commotions in several parts of Europe, but more especially in Bohemia, about religion. There was one John Huss, once a priest under the prisoner and professor of divinity in the University of Prague, who preached with great freedom against the supremacy, government, vices, and wickedness of the prisoner and his clergy, against whom he manifested the firmest opposition. He was a man of the highest reputation for the purity of his doctrine and life, so that no other charge could be brought to oppose him but his opposition to the prisoner's authority. The Archbishop of Prague and the clergy in general were so greatly incensed that they brought an accusation against him before the prisoner, and he was excommunicated in the year 1410. Huss, however, continued to preach in the same manner, and many embracing his doctrine, he was ordered to repair the council at Constance to answer to the charges brought against him. I knew well that his appearance would be attended with danger to his person, as I was confident that he had many enemies to encounter with. I thereby granted him a safe conduct to Constance, security while he continued there, and every protection on his return, on his consenting to attend, all of which I promised in the most solemn manner. He obeyed the summons and vindicated his conduct before the council in a manner that greatly surprised his adversaries. But he was declared to be a heretic, was cast into prison, and condemned to be burnt. I pleaded my solemn promise to secure him from injury, but it was overruled. When to satisfy my guilty conscience and remove every impediment out of the way in future, a law was framed that faith must not be kept with heretics. He was therefore burnt on the 6th of July, 1415. Question: was there not another also condemned by the same council and burnt at the same place? Answer: yes. His name was Jerome of Prague, John Huss's companion and friend, who accompanied him to Constance with the design of supporting his persecuted friend. He was burnt on the 30th of May following. Question: did you violate your oath because that council or rebellious convention formed that infamous decree in the name of the Vicar of Christ? Answer: I confess I was awfully deluded. I knew nothing of the laws and statutes of the Sovereign of Heaven. They were hid by his priests from me. Could I only have seen the consequences that followed, it is more than probable I should never have violated my promise, as a civil war was kindled, and the Bohemians, revolting, maintained and defended their opinions by arms as well as arguments. Question: as you was present at that council or disaffected assembly, will you relate to the court what you know of the reasons why the prisoner changed his name during the time the council sat? Answer: when he yielded to my entreaty, as I before noticed, he summoned the council by the name Pope John the 23rd. But after the assembly met, they decreed that the names of Benedict the 13th, Gregory the 12th, and John the 23rd should be branded with infamy and contempt, especially the one by which the council was collected for having, among other things, laid to his charge, maintained openly and obstinately that the souls of men die as the souls of beasts, and that there is neither heaven nor hell. It was then agreed that the prisoner should be elected by a new and better title, which was done accordingly, and he assumed that of Pope Martin V, Vicar of Christ and Prince of the Apostles. And I confess that, being deluded by him, I kneeled down, kissed his feet, and worshipped him. Question: do you recollect his sending ambassadors to Constantinople by this name with some particular instructions? Answer: I do. Question: do you know the prisoner's handwriting? Answer: I do. Question: did you ever see this paper before? A paper produced to this witness. Answer: I have. It was written by the prisoner by the name of Pope Martin V. Then the paper was then read. It was the instructions of the ambassador sent to Constantinople, the beginning of which will show the impiety and arrogance of this pontiff in a manner that could leave no doubt on the minds of any if he had usurped the dignity and titles of our beloved sovereign or not. It was as follows: the most holy and most blessed, who hath the heavenly empire, who is Lord on earth, the master of the universal world, the Father of kings, the light of the world, the most high and sovereign Bishop Martin, by divine providence, commandeth unto Master Anthony Mason. Here the people appeared filled with indignation and were so irritated that the court could not proceed for several minutes, and it is probable the prisoner would have been dragged from the dock and would have become the object of the vindictive rage of the populace, but for the Lord Chief Justice, who, after obtaining silence, observed that, however hideous and numerous the offenses of the prisoner might be, it was just that he should have a fair and legal trial. And I'm going to end that there, brothers and sisters, and I will pick it up here in a little bit. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And embed the Word of God upon the tablets of your hearts, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. I love you so much. Bye-bye.